Hi everyone! Today is my favorite kind of day. It is new pattern day and I'm super excited about this one. So when I was in Italy, I was really inspired by this bag and therefore I had to give it an Italian name. I came up with the Farfalla, and the reason why is because it has a flap that kind of mimics a butterfly. Isn't that cool? So this bag, this one here is done in leather. It can be either a backpack or a sling. So let me show you. This is the backpack version, how it sits. And then all you have to do is zip up the zipper, because there's zippers on the straps. You can slide the slide adjusters down and then make it into a sling. Easily converted. So let's talk about some of the features of the bag. As I just mentioned, it is easily converted between a backpack and a sling. I mean, what else can you, that's just amazing. This is the one that we are doing in the tutorial today. It is made out of faux leather. This one is made out of leather, so you can do it out of either. What I do want to caution you on is you want to make sure you use something that's fairly soft and pliable because of the flap. So let's look at the flap. The flap opens up. Now, let me show you if you unzip this. The flap, the straps themselves, okay, have a way of going through the front of this bag to hold it closed. So really this button here is more decorative than anything else. It's really not needed because even without it, the bag stays closed. There is no way for a pickpocketer to get inside this backpack bag. It's impossible because this top strap, and when you have this against your back and you're pulling this closed, they can't get in. So when you open the bag, you will see that the strap pulls a little bit to open it, and then it opens like a bucket bag. Okay, so that's the inside of it. But it's an asymmetrical bucket bag. You have a front zipper pocket that's very large. In the back, you have a zipper pocket that will hold your cell phone. So originally I had designed this pocket a little bit different, and our real life testers said some of them, their phones were too large and they wouldn't fit back here. So I redesigned this so that it would fit larger phones. On the inside, we have on one side, and I know insides are always hard to see, but on one side we have credit card slots, and on the other side we have a slip pocket. I'm sure you can see that. Okay. So it is considered a smaller bag. This is not a tote bag where you're going to be able to fit everything you own in it. It is definitely something that you're going to use to kind of skirt around town. Very stylish, very unique. Use this button opportunity to get creative. So you will see some of my testers use different types of clasps, snaps, clips, all kinds of things. I show you how to make a fabric button in the tutorial, which this one here is actually made out of faux leather. Or I have these wooden toggles available on the website in black, brown, and a light brown, so they should match with just about anything. But get creative with it. Okay? Get creative. So I hope that you enjoy watching this tutorial. This is the Farfalla. Enjoy. Let's go over pattern pieces and prep work, because there's actually a lot of prep work with this bag. So the first thing we have is our back piece. And we have one back piece. There is a hole cut out for the zipper only. And let's go over this back piece for just a second, because there's a lot of different markings on this back piece. I suggest that you print two versions of it. One on the actual exterior line and one on the line for the stabilizer. It is an asymmetrical piece, so you have to look at the writing on here to tell you how to lay it on your pattern or on your fabric. So for the back, you're going to have the pattern piece right side up on the right side of the fabric. For the stabilizer, you're going to have the pattern piece right side up on the glue side of the stabilizer, so the wrong side. And because all of these pieces for the exterior of the bag are asymmetric and they're different shaped, you really want to make sure you pay attention to that. Otherwise, you're going to cut one of your pieces backwards and then you'll have to recut. Okay, so that's just kind of a word of caution. So let's look at this back piece for a second. You see on this back piece, I have this big box cut out of the pattern piece. I have my zipper opening cut out of the pattern piece, and then I have where my two D-ring connectors cut out of the pattern piece. But when you cut it out of your fabric, you're only going to cut the zipper part. Sorry. And the rest, you're going to mark. So I'm going to bring this up to the camera so you can hopefully see. There's a box up here for placement of my upper piece for my strap and my upper closure. Down here at the bottom, I drew boxes so that you could see the placement for the actual D-rings, okay? So just be very cautious of what you're cutting when you get to your fabric. The only thing is the zipper opening. I suggest that you go ahead and put your stabilizer on the back first and then cut out the zipper opening. And that way you're only cutting once and you make sure it's all lined up. Okay, so again, one back piece marked appropriately. There's also marks for your placement of your closures. So there's a little side closure here. You have got some upper closures here, and you have the button placement here. So I just marked all of those with my fabric pen where indicated. Now the back piece, as we put that together, that's a whole step in itself. There's just a lot going on with it. It's not hard, it's just a lot of steps. Then you also have two lining pieces with that back piece. Now when you cut your lining, you want to make sure they're mirrored. So see how they're not, you're going to put right sides of the fabric together and you're going to cut. And you're not cutting any holes for or marking anything for placement. So you're just using the pattern piece itself to cut the lining, not the one with the stabilizer, but the actual pattern piece on the outside line. You're cutting two of those. You're going to put some woven interfacing, and no holes, no markings, nothing like that. Then you have your left side front piece. And on this left side front piece, again, pay attention to how you lay the actual pattern piece on your fabric and on your stabilizer. You're going to do the same thing, the right side up on the fabric and the right side up on the glue side of the stabilizer. And I am using Decaville Light for all of these pieces. This would be a good bag to use maybe some fleece if you wanted to instead of the Decaville, because you need a kind of a softer faux or leather, because you have that flap and you want it to bend. Then you have the right front side piece, and this right front side piece has a zipper opening here. So again, you're going to cut, you've got a main piece, you have a stabilizer piece. Pay attention to how you lay them down. And then this is what your piece is going to look like. So we have one of those. We have one of each of those. Then we have our bottom. Now the bottom, I suggested you cut out of a actual accent fabric. So I'm doing mine in black. When you cut the piece, you have one for the actual bottom, and then you cut on a dotted line for the stabilizer. Because this is a symmetrical piece, you don't have to worry about how you lay it on the fabric, but you're going to go ahead and fuse your stabilizer. I use Decaville Heavy here. And then you have a separate piece for your lining. And the reason why is because we're going to take larger seam allowances on the side as we sew the lining, and it's going to kind of cinch that in, and we want to make sure that we don't use the same main piece because it's not going to fit. It's going to be too big. So I just use woven interfacing on the back of this bottom piece for the lining. Then you have two front zipper pocket pieces, and they're different. One has the zipper piece cut out, the other one does not. One of them you need to lay right side down on the fabric, the other one you need to lay wrong side down on the fabric. So again, pay attention to that. You've got, you see how they're opposite? This is the one with the zipper opening. You can see that, well, maybe you can see that there. And then this is the one without. And the reason why you want them opposite is because once you sew them on the bag, you're going to put right sides together to form the pocket. And you want to make sure that you don't cut it backwards, one of these pieces. You're going to have to recut. Then we have just a square rectangle, and we're going to have two pieces for our back pocket. This is a back pocket piece. And the first few times we did it, not all cell phones fit in this, and we kind of did a little bit of redesigning and recutting, and we made sure that bigger cell phones fit into this back pocket. You have an interior slip pocket, and this is a piece that is on the fold, but when you cut it, it's nice and long. We're just going to fold it in half and create a little interior slip pocket. We have credit card slots. Now the credit card slots, I suggest you cut from the accent. This is your credit card slot one piece. You're going to cut an actual piece of your accent and a piece of your lining. The lining has nothing on it, no woven interfacing or anything. No stabilizer on the back of this either. Now, the good thing about this credit card is that you can cut as many credit card slots as you want. The pattern calls for two pieces like this and one actual square piece to go on the top. You could make, if you want a lot of credit card slots in this bag, you could make 6 or 7 of these. It's up to you. For this pattern, we're actually going to make 2 of the credit card slot ones and 1 of the credit card slot 2 piece. And again, they all have lining, no stabilizers, no woven interfacing, nothing on these. We have a strap and handle support piece. This goes on the back of the bag. This covers the strap and the upper closure. And one of my testers suggested this. I really like this idea. Should put a piece of foam on the back of this to help kind of cushion and not have those strap pieces show through this. So we are going to do that in this video because I think that's an excellent idea. You have some upper closures, you have some side closures, you have some grab handles, and all of those are cut without a pattern piece. That's just a quick measurement, 2 by whatever. They're all different pieces. You have 2 D-ring connectors. You have 2 strap pieces. Now, these strap pieces are narrow. They're only 2 inches instead of your regular 4 inch. Give you the length, and you're going to draw a line down the center. That's as far as I've gotten. I'm going to show you how to do these strap connectors because we have the zipper sandwiched in between. You can do one of 2 things. The front part of this bag, you can use a wide array of decorative buttons for this, and I've had some people use, my testers did fabulous with this. this is a place for you to get creative. So I give you a piece that you can cut out to create your own button. And I cut that out of my accent. I'm going to show you how to do that. But I also have these wooden toggle buttons on the website. They come in black, dark brown, and a light brown color. And they are perfect for this. So you can grab yourself, they already have the holes in them. You can grab one of these, or if you have any kind of, buckle, snap, anything, it would be a fabulous place for that. You're going to need some kind of either shoelace or leather piece or cording, something to attach your button. Now this is a actual, I think I got this either on Amazon or maybe even at Hobby Lobby. It's just a spool of black leather. It's 1/8 of an inch. You can certainly get that, but as you see, you get quite a bit. So in this case, if you grab one of these buttons from me, these holes are large enough that you could theoretically make a really thin strap out of your accent. You could probably just cut it 2 inches, fold it in half again, so it's only 1/4 of an inch thick, and that will fit through this hole. You may have to kind of shove it in there, but it should fit. So just kind of keep that in mind. You want something that's going to have enough strength so that it doesn't break over time. Because this is a thinner cord, I'm going to double up on it. When searching for cord, you might want to search for 1/4 inch instead of 1/8 of an inch, just to kind of give it that extra little stability. You're going to need a long zipper. Get zipper by the yard, and this is going to be for the straps. So these convert from backpack to sling. And you're going to need obviously a zipper pull for that. You're also going to need, that's the number 5 zipper. You're also going to need 2 other pieces of number 5 zipper. And of course I give you the measurements for that. 3 zipper pulls. You're going to need 2 D-rings, and these D-rings are 1 inch. You're going to need 2 1-inch swivel clasps. You're going to need 2 slide adjusters. Now I'm using 3/4 inch for this. 3/4 inch will work unless you have a really super thick faux or leather. Be careful of that again, because this bag, you've got flaps and you've got all kinds of things. Use a lighter weight if you can find it, even for the strap. Okay, and then your 3/4 inch should be fine. And we do carry the 3/4 inch in the shop. And then of course a 1/2 inch swivel clasp. We also have a couple of pieces for key fobs and pocket accents that you cut. And there are some different techniques in this bag. We're going to learn a lot today. I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's get started. Step 1 is the strap. And what I've done so far is I drew a line down the center of the strap, and I put 1/4 inch double-sided tape about maybe about 1 inch or maybe even it's not an inch, I'm sorry, about 1/4 inch apart from each other on either side of that line. So just like a normal strap, we are going to fold the long edges to the center, and we're going to, no, we're not going to go all the way to the line. You want to leave it's really important to leave a space between these 2 folds as you do it. So I'm just going to kind of go shy of the line. I'm going to fold each side up very carefully here. In order to avoid twisting straps, don't pull on the side. You just want to fold it up and pat it down. Try to resist the urge to take it and push your hand across it. That's just pushing it out of shape and making it stretch. And you certainly don't want that. Here, we get this one out of the way. So we're going to continue folding. all the way down to the other end. Just like that. Okay. So now let's peel the backing off the other side, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. So far nothing's different than a normal strap. Except for it's narrower. So I'm leaving maybe just shy, let's say a scant 1/4 of an inch between the two long edges. Okay. Go down the other side. I like to start in the middle with these straps usually. And that way I'm not off, you know, or if I am off, it's only for part of the strap. I can unstick and restick it, not having to do the whole thing. And you can tell if you're off or not, whether this shorter edge matches up. Okay, so now we have the strap. You can see here that there is a space. Easy enough. Now you want to take your 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape. Now we're going to place it along the edge of one of these long edges. So right on the edge of that. And I'll show you this placement in just a minute. You'll see as I get down to the end here. We're going to go the whole way down. Okay, so you can see here that that tape is right along one of those long edges. So now we're going to peel the backing off the tape, and we're going to take the end of the zipper. So when I say the end, this long edge here, and we're going to lay it right up against the edge that we folded and the edge of that tape. So don't pull your zipper, just lay it down right on that edge. So the edge of my zipper is aligning with the edge, the long edge that I'm peeling the backing off the tape. And get the rest of this backing off. And all the way down. Okay, so here's what we have now. The edge of the zipper and this long edge that I put the double-sided tape on are lined up. So from here, we'll take our clips and we're just going to fold this edge right over and clip it. You're just folding it along. I mean, basically, it's going to fold automatically if you leave and I say automatically, you're going to have plenty of space to fold it because you've left that little bit of space there. And when you fold it, it's going to fold easily, and it's going to kind of know where it wants to fold automatically, right around the edge of that zipper tape. All right, we're going to do the other side here. Go all the way down. Okay, so here's what we have. And now we're ready to stitch that side. So I want to stitch the side that's open first. However, I'm not going to be able to use my edge guide like I normally do when I do this because it's on an inside edge. When I turn to do the outside edge, I'll be able to use it. But the inside edge, I'm just going to go real slow and make sure I stay about 1/8 of an inch away from that fold all the way down. And at this point, don't worry if your zipper's longer, we're going to trim that off. And then you do want to back stitch. See here, if I put my edge guide on, it's going to be on the other side of the zipper. This zipper is a little flimsy, and so it probably isn't going to stay real straight. I'm going to probably do a little bit better if I just go straight with it this way. So that's what I'm going to do. And back stitch. And I'm just hugging that side 1/8 of an inch away.
Paper.
So as I get to the end, I am going to back stitch on this end as well.
Okay.
So now my first row is done. I'm going to go ahead and go down the other side. And this time I can use my edge guide.
Out.
And go a little quicker here. I am going to backstitch. Part of the key to this, I think, is when the extra zipper that you have, don't let it go off to one side or the other as you're stitching. Try to keep it centered, coming off your lap or wherever you're holding it, and that will help keep it straight as well.
Yes.
And there I have half of the zipper completed. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the other half of the zipper. I'm just going to put it on this other side and then we'll move on. I now have both sides stitched, and all I'm going to do is even it up. So I am going to have to, when I put these two edges on, for instance, I didn't exactly line them up the same. So I'm just going to make sure that everything is nice and even and cut that off. I'm going to burn the edge with a lighter. I just don't want the zipper to fray at all. Any little threads I'll burn. So now I have a nice, neat edge there. You can do the same thing with the other side. Cut all my little threads. All right, and then the last thing we want to do is put our zipper pull on. So I have my zipper pull on, and I'm just going to set the strap aside, and we're going to move on to step 2, which is the connectors and the closures. So I'm going to take my D-ring straps, my upper closure, my side closure, my grab strap. I'm going to get my button, whatever kind of button I choose, my extra little string. And the first thing we're going to do is draw lines down the center of each one of these closures. On the D-ring closure, I'm going to take some 1/2-inch double-sided tape, put it right down the center of each. I should say the D-ring connectors and closure. I'm going to peel the backing off the tape, fold these edges in, the long edges that is, and in this case you want your long edges to meet. It's not like the straps. You want in the back those edges to meet exactly right. All right, we're going to set these aside. No top stitching on those. On these other closures and grab straps, you can do a couple things. Because they're small enough, I usually don't use double-sided tape on these. I'm just going to fold the long edges into the center and then fold it again and put a little clip. If I had a long piece, I would probably use double-sided tape, but these are so tiny, I don't really think it needs it. Okay, so now we've taken that piece, which is 2 inches, and got it down to ½ inch. No, quarter inch. Yeah, about a quarter inch. Okay, then do the same thing on this. No, it's kind of between a ½ inch and a quarter inch. It's pretty tiny. Now, one hint is to save time. You could add all of these together, the numbers I give you, and just do one long strip and then cut them to the size you need, which is typically what I would do. It just makes it easier to stitch all at once. Either way will work fine. Now we're going to stitch, and we're only going to do one line of stitching on these. So stitch it about 1/8 of an inch from the edge.
Good. That's good. Good.
Okay, so we have all of our closures and straps here complete. We're going to set those aside. Now let's take a look at our button. So you have this kind of funky piece here that I have you cut. And this is where you're going to need super glue. And I'm just using this Loctite super glue. I'm going to start from one of the pointed ends. And I'm just going to do a really tight roll. Just as tight as I can. Okay. And then right before I get to the end, I'm going to put just a couple little dabs of super glue in this triangle piece here. It's like that. And then go ahead and roll it and just hold it for a minute. Just don't get any on you. It won't take long. It'll stick. Now you can either put a dot on each side of this triangle, or you can just use your hole punch to punch a hole. You want to make sure you use one of your largest settings. And you pretty much do a dot on here so you can see. So I'm just going to punch through all of that fabric on those 2 dots. And I just kind of eyeballed it. They are about 1 inch apart from each other, which is about the same as the wooden button. So this wooden button does not want to stay put. Just going to punch a hole there. Punch a hole here. And this is a great method if you have a really unique color accent you're using and you want to keep it all consistent. Okay, and then we have our cute little button. So depending on which one you want to use, you can either use the fabric one that you made, or you can use a wooden one or something else. What I'm going to do is now thread my cording through these two holes. So I'm going to show you on the wooden button because it's easier to get through. You can do this in pretty much any way you want, but you certainly want to make sure that it's going to be secure. So instead of just going through once like that, where I just pulled that right through, I'm going to feed these back through one more time. So I'm just going to crisscross them, feed it back through, like that, and then a tie knot. And I encourage you to check out the inspiration or the tester bags for inspiration on this, because they use some really neat closures. Okay, so now I have my button. I've got 2 straps here to help secure it to the bag, and this is ready to go. You would do the same thing if you decided to use the fabric button, either one. Okay, so let's move on. Step 3 is the back. And when you, just to kind of give you a little overview of how we're going to do this, we're going to work from the bottom up as far as attaching things onto this back piece. And the reason why is because at the very top, you're putting your strap, and once your strap is on, it's on. I mean, you're sewing it on there. So then you have it to contend with. It's a lot easier to put that on last than to put it on first. Also, as we put this pocket on, the pocket is going to fall down below these 2 D-ring connectors, and you don't want the pocket on there while you're trying to stitch the D-ring connectors and accidentally stitch your pocket to your bag. So there's a reason for why we're going bottom up. First thing you want to do is to take your 2 D-ring connectors that we folded earlier, and I give you a few measurements in the pattern. You want to go ahead and mark a line on each connector. And it's not half, it's a little bit more than that. We're going to put a D-ring on, and you want to put the D-ring on the side that is furthest from that line. Okay, so we're going to slide the D-ring on, and then we're going to match the edge of this strap up with that line. Now, before we do that, we want to put just a little bit of double-sided tape to help hold it for us. And I'm using 1/4 inch here. And I'm just going to straddle that piece of 1/4 inch on the line. Okay, the D-ring's going on the line, or the part of the line that's furthest. We got more space here than here. So I'm going to undo the backing off the tape and just place that edge right there on that line. Then I'm going to take the other side and fold it up. So essentially, from the front, we have this nice looking connector. On the back, you can see this is where our line is. We've got more space on the D-ring side than we do on the other side. So we're going to do the same thing on this side. All right, so now we're going to put a little bit more double-sided tape on here. And this time, it's going to kind of do 2 things for me. It's going to hold those folds together, and then I'm going to be able to stick that right on the bag, and it's going to hold it for me. So peel the backing off the tape and center your connector right in the box you drew. They are slightly at an angle. All right, and now we're going to stitch that on. So I always start, I'm going to start right here where the connector is, and I'm going to stitch across this part first, allowing my presser foot to get as close as possible to the D-ring. So I'm going to stitch across, I'm going to go down, cross, back up, and just do a little back stitch here. Then we'll put a rivet. So this is the least wide section of my presser foot. I'm just going to kind of test and see how close I can get. Put my needle down. And you can either I'm using black, so I probably will back stitch, but if you're not, I would say don't back stitch. Just start and stop in the same hole, and then that way you can tie it off on the back. You want to make sure it's about 1/8 of an inch away, which it is. I'm going to turn, and I'm going to put a little piece of leather on here to protect my connector. And come down the side, all the way to the bottom. Then turn again. And then come back up. So what we have done is we have stitched a nice big rectangle on that. From there, I'm going to measure down 1 inch from the fold. So from this fold right here, you're going to measure down 1 inch, you're going to center it and put a little dot. And that's where we're going to put our rivet. All right, there's our little dot. Cinch a hole. Place a rivet. Okay, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing for this other connector. So we have the back connectors, D-ring connectors on. We've got our rivets in and ready to go. So we're going to set this aside for just a minute and work on this back pocket. So you're going to take your 2 pocket pieces and the smaller zipper. We're going to clip it on one side, one of the short sides. Put the wrong side of the zipper against the right side of the pocket. We're going to stitch that on. We're then going to flip it so that the seam allowance is laying against this back part and the zipper tape is nice and flat, and we're going to top stitch. From there, we're going to put the other long side of the zipper against the wrong side of the pocket. So again, the wrong side of the say it again, the wrong side of the zipper against the right side of the other pocket piece. Clip it in place and stitch. And when I'm stitching, I'm just using about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then once again, we're going to flip it. We're going to make sure the zipper tape lays nice and flat, and we're going to top stitch. So now we see the right side of the zipper with the wrong side of the pockets, and the wrong side of the zipper with the right side of the pockets. Just going to get all these little loose ends cleaned up on the zipper tape so it does not fray. I'm going to put my zipper pull on, and then I'm going to put some 1/4 inch double-sided tape right against the edge of the zipper tape on the top and the bottom. Right. We want the zipper pull to be closing towards the left. Unless you want it to the right, you can totally make it the right. It's your bag. You can do however you would like. We're going to peel the backing off the tape, and we're going to center this zipper right inside that zipper window that we cut out. Whoops. Make sure I get my pull in there. All right, so now that's centered. With this pocket open in the back, we're going to stitch around that opening using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm not going to backstitch on this. You're probably not going to be able to tell because it's a pattern, but I'm going to go ahead and pull my threads through the back and tie them off. Let me go ahead and pull my thread through. All right. I'm going to start in the same, or stop in the same hole I started in. Let's pull these threads through to the back and tie them off. I'm going to singe the ends with a lighter just to make sure they don't come apart. Okay, from here, go ahead and close the pocket. So bring your upper section down to your lower. I'm going to put a few clips, and whenever you do a pocket this way, you're always going to have about 1 inch left over at the bottom. Just cut that off to make them even. And we're going to close all 3 open sides of this pocket. So when you do this, turn it so the bag is face up and just pull the side over and stitch down to come around And then we're going to come up this other side. From here, go ahead and trim off any excess. Now, you see that the pocket here is kind of overlapping that seam allowance. You want to make sure it's outside your seam allowance, or inside your seam allowance, rather. So I'm just going to trim that off. So that it's inside the seam allowance, and when I sew my bag together, it's not going to be in the way. See how that's out of the way? Okay, so now we have the pocket and the D-rings. So now let's work on the strap and the other things up here. So the first thing we want to do is find the center of this kind of rectangle. It's got a little angle on it, but you want to find the center up and down and crosswise. And I'm going to use my pen here to just make a mark. So that right there is the center. Grab your strap and a couple things. You want to make sure you put right sides together. So the right side of the strap is going to go against the right side of your bag, and you're going to line the zipper teeth up with the dot. So the dot represents the middle. You want this edge to be in the middle of this rectangle. You can use a little bit of double-sided tape on here if you want to have it help hold you down, or have it help you hold it down. And the other thing is you want to make sure your pull is going away from your bag. Okay, so when I put this down to open, I'm going to be opening towards the bag, and to close, I'm going to be closing away from the bag. So I'm going to just put the teeth right there, the very edge of the teeth right there on that center dot. So when you look at this, my center dot was right here. Okay? The square goes up and around like this. Put the teeth right there on that center dot. From there, you're going to take your grab strap, your top grab strap, and you're going to place it, and you can put a little bit of double-sided tape on this as well. It just kind of helps hold everything down so it doesn't slide on you. You can put just a little bit on each end. Just like that, just a little bit. And I'm going to place it one end on each side of this grab, or of this zipper pull, about a 1/2 inch away. So let's see, let me put it this way. And I'm going to line it up and make it even so that all of the different edges here are all even with each other. Okay. And again, this is my box. This is the width of my box here, and that's right in the center. I'm going to stitch these in place. I'm going to do 2 rows of stitching. One at the very bottom of each of these, and then one about 1/4 inch up, just to give it some extra stability. Because you're going to have a lot of pressure on this. You're going to have a lot of tugging, and want to make sure it does not fall apart. All right, that's one row. I'm just going to move this down and do one more. So just to show you from the back, we've got 2 rows of stitching there. Now all this is nice and secure on there. Now this part, I gave a hint in the pattern on it, but I didn't show you any instructions on it. This was suggested by one of my testers, and it was really fantastic. We're going to go ahead and do it. If you look at the bag, the original bag, let me show this to you. You can kind of see the lump here where all of these edges end. Because this piece of faux, or actually this is leather, this piece of leather isn't super thick, and so it's evident as to where that is. So the way that she solved that, she didn't like the way that looked, and I agree, but the way she solved that is she cut a piece of foam to go over that to help hide all that bulk. So here is your strap keeper piece, okay? It is at an angle, and the shorter part goes at the top, and that's the way your box is drawn as well. So I'm going to start out by putting just a little bit of double-sided tape. I'm actually going to use 1/4 inch to keep this piece of foam on. So what I did is when I cut this foam, I just cut it as if it was a piece of stabilizer on there. So you can see it's outside the seam allowances, so that when I sew, I'm not going to be sewing on it. It's just going to be sewing all the way around. So let's put this little bit of double-sided tape on here. I'm going to center it on here. All right, so that just kind of holds it in place for me. And now I'm going to do 2 rows of 1/2 inch double-sided tape, one right next to each other. And the reason why I do 2 is because I found that it does not shift as much when you have 2 layers. And I'm keeping them outside the seam allowance. So I'm going to peel those off. And I'm going to put it right on top of these handles and connectors and straps and everything else. Okay. So now we're going to stitch around this using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. I am going to pull my threads through the back and tie them off. This really is not as much of a support, although we are doing one more row of stitching over these straps, but it's really for decorative purposes so you don't see the ends of those straps and connectors hanging out. And you turn and come down. Take another little 1/2 stitch there. I'm going to pull these threads through. I'm going to take another 1/2 stitch. And then start and stop in the same hole. Tie these off, and then I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided tape over that to hold that knot so it doesn't come out. Okay, and then we have our strap keeper, and see the difference as far as you can't see or feel where the edge of those strap pieces are, and that is definitely a fantastic thing. I love it. So we need to attach our button and all of our other connectors on the back. So on the longest side here is where your button's going to go. You want to place your button so that you have about 1.5 inches of string beyond the edge. And I'm going to clip it. And I'm going to make sure, and I do, okay. Then the smaller of these two pieces you have left is the upper closure. So you're just going to kind of turn it and place it at the top here on each dot. There's 2 dots. You just put one on each one. Okay. And then you have your side closure. Now the side closure goes over here, close to your zipper. And on this one, I'm going to take the 2 ends and I'm going to make sure they touch. I'm going to put it right on that dot. Okay, so let's baste all of these in place. So now that all the closures and connectors are on, now we're done with our back. I'm going to set it aside and let's work on the rest of the bag. So this is step 4, and this is going to be the exterior. So we're going to need our right front piece. We're going to need our longer zipper here. Clean up these edges. We're going to need our pocket pieces. These are the front pocket pieces. Let's start with that. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape. This is 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape, and I'm going to put it right along the edge of the zipper opening. I'm going to peel the backing off, and I'm going to center the zipper right side down, right on top. And I give you plenty of extra zipper here, so if you want to measure, you can, but as long as you've got some, a few inches on each side, you're fine. Or 1.5 inches roughly. So I'm going to put some more double-sided tape on the back side of the zipper. And then we're going to take that pocket piece, right side down, on top, and line up the openings. Okay, so that's what we have. Now, I like to sew this from the back because I feel like there's less bulk on the zipper. You want to measure 1/4 of an inch So from this point right here, you want to measure 1/4 of an inch over and 1/4 of an inch down. It should roughly be where your decaville or your stabilizer ends, roughly, okay? But just go ahead and double check, because sometimes when we put our stabilizers on, we're off a little bit. Make a dot. And what we're going to do is sew between the dots. I'm going to do one on each side. So 1/4 of an inch in, 1/4 of an inch up. So I have my 2 dots. See, there's one there and there's one right there. We're going to sew right between the dots. Don't go beyond them. You do want to backstitch. So you see there, it is just beyond, 1/4 of an inch beyond, and it's inside that decaville. From here, you're going to cut an angle from the corner, so right here from this corner, down to your stitching. Okay, so it's going to look just like that. You can do that on both sides. All right, so from here, flip the lining to the back. And I'm going to take my main and my lining pieces and kind of separate them and make sure the zipper's in the middle. So I'm just going to kind of finger press this. You can certainly take it to your iron and press it. So basically what I have here is I can see the zipper, I can see a raw edge on the fabric. When I pull that raw edge down, or when I pull that edge down, you can see the zipper. And then behind the zipper, we have, of course, our lining. So you can see the zipper's kind of sandwiched in between there. I am going to run over to the iron and just make sure this lays nice and flat. Before we go any further, you want to add your zipper pull. The first 5 times I made this bag, I forgot my zipper pull. I don't know why, but I could not remember to put my zipper pull on. So you want to make sure that the wider part of this piece is the bottom. You want to put the zipper pull on from there and go up. So I am going to just kind of move this out of the way. Get that pull on. Okay, so now we're good. Okay, so now from here, what you want to do is you're going to take this main piece where you see that raw edge, and you're just going to fold it against your zipper and match up the top edges. Okay, you see how I did that? We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're just going to take this and we're going to fold it over and we're going to match up the top edges. Then you're going to turn this around and you do the same thing with the lining. So here's our lining. We're going to fold it and match up the top edges and clip it with the main part of the bag. So now what happens is, see on the back, you have that little edge sticking out. And you have it over here as well. You have that little edge. You want to see that on both sides. So flip this lining over. So at the top, let me pull this apart, you see the main fabric here, you see the zipper, and then you see your lining. And that's all sandwiched. All these edges are meeting. And same thing on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch this little edge right here. And we're going to do it 1/4 of an inch from the edge. You don't want to go beyond your main stitches. And if you pull this back, you can see where those main stitches are. See right there coming across? They're right there. So you don't want to stitch beyond that. We're just going to stitch this little spot right here. And I've learned that it's better to stay a little bit further away than get too close. The other thing is that you really want to make sure that these pieces stay straight. It's easy for them to get a little cattywampus, and we don't want an angle here. We want it to stay nice and straight. Okay, so that's what we have. Just pull that off. And now when we fold these two pieces back, wrong sides together, you get a nice corner right there. So that forms the edge for your zipper. You know, this part here. So we don't have to put a separate part in. Okay, so do the same thing over here. All right, so we have that edge stitched. I'm going to unclip, and then we're just going to fold these two edges, wrong sides together. We have a nice edge there. So from here, I want to top stitch. Using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to come down, go all the way across, and come up this other side. And that's going to hold this lining down nice and tight, and it's going to secure all these edges. Okay, so we have everything top stitched now. You can see a little bit better from that side. So now we need to add the other side of the pocket. So you're going to lay the pocket pieces right sides together. And you're going to clip. Now we're going to be turning the bag through this pocket. So we do not want to close it. The edge of the pocket is going to go against the long edge of this zipper. Okay? So you can put some double-sided tape on there if you'd like. Now what I'm going to do is baste this zipper on. And I'm just going to use about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm not necessarily going to go to the end of the bag. I'm just going to stay right on where the zipper is and just baste that on. From here, we want to close this pocket. Well, we don't want to close it. We want to close most of the edges here. And this is a little tricky because it's kind of a odd shape. So we know we want to close the top. What I'm going to do is just kind of pull this top down. I'm going to come up, come around, and stitch about, you want to stitch roughly about 3 inches down this pocket, okay? And if you want, you can even put like a little dot on it, because you want to give yourself plenty of room to turn the bag. But if you stop, if you don't stitch this whole edge, like if you don't stitch up to this, I guess, point is what I'm saying, it's really difficult to pull this through at the end to close it. So you want to give yourself enough space to turn it, but close it enough that you're not struggling, if that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to stitch, I'm going to stitch up and around and come down to this dot I made, which is 3 inches down. And then at the bottom, we're going to stitch the pocket closed, come around, and we're going to stop right here at the bottom, because we have plenty of space to close it down here. It's just up here where it gets a little bit tough. And what I've also found is that when I start up here, I'm actually not even going to try to, I'm just going to kind of go straight across here to close it, because you're not going to be putting anything way up in this corner either. This is just to give you enough to do the stitching when you fold these pieces back, so you have something to fold against. So start right about here, come across, catch the zipper, and then go down the 3 inches. East. Make sure you backstitch real good, because as you turn this, you're going to be pulling on it. I'm going to kind of cut this top off, including the edge of that zipper. And then burn it. Okay, so you will see here, let me show you what I've done. You can see I've only stitched to right here. And then you go any further, that hopefully will give me enough to turn the bag, but yet I've come down far enough that I'm not struggling to close this top corner. Right, and we're going to close the bottom. It is not essential for your stitches to meet here, because when you open this pocket, you're not going to be able to get your finger, I mean, I can't even get my finger in there, okay? So don't struggle trying to meet up those stitches right there. Don't worry about that. Just kind of do this corner and come around, and then I'm just going to clip off the excess here. So the pockets did not match up exactly right. Okay. So we now have this pocket on. And we want to get our front left side. We're going to put it right sides together. Now, when you clip this on, you want 1/4 inch of your triangle to be above the top. That's going to make everything line up really nice. You're going to clip right along your zipper, and you will find that at the bottom you have about 1/4 inch of that triangle showing there as well. Okay, so let's stitch, and make sure you move your zipper pull as you go. And if I did not mention earlier, this pattern has 1/4 inch seam allowance. And the reason why is because of the zippers in the seams and the fact that you're stitching a round bottom on, you need the smaller seam allowance. Now, you will know if you lined up your triangle right, because what's going to happen is your seam allowance, when you stitch, you're going to stitch right there at the crook where that triangle comes in. That's your 1/4 inch. It's going to be like that at the bottom, and it's going to be like that at the top in both places. So now what's going to happen is when you open this up and you fold it, your bottom is going to match up exactly correct. You see there's nothing sticking out here at the bottom. At the top, you're going to have that little triangle that's still sticking out. Once we top stitch, we're just going to cut that off. Okay, so go ahead and top stitch this seam. So now that that seam is top stitched, we have our little triangle up here. We're just going to cut that off. And at the bottom, there's nothing to cut off. The bottom is perfectly straight there. So now comes the fun part. We get to put it all together. So lay your back on top of your front. And the side where your button is the side we're going to stitch first. So it's the most angled, tallest side. So go ahead and clip that. Make sure all your parts and pieces are out of the way. And we're going to stitch. And even this seam is 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, go ahead and open this up. Make sure your seam allowance is going towards your back piece. And we're going to top stitch. Okay, so you're going to have this little triangle at the top going towards your back piece. Go ahead and just snip that off. Make it even with the back. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and clip the other side. We have our big snake of a strap here that we're having to carry along with us. You have a lot of pieces stuffed in there, so you might have to really work to get these two edges to match up. I mean, it's not hard, but you just want to make sure that everything, because it's going to try to pull out of proportion a little bit, get it to match. And sometimes I'll even put clips like along the top and the bottom to help hold everything in place. All right, let's go ahead and stitch. And when I stitch this, you can see I'm kind of holding my arm underneath here to push it up, because if you try to lay it flat, again, this top is going to try to pull away. You want to curve it up to make sure these ends stay meeting. So we now know where our sides are, because we're not top stitching that, by the way. The inspiration bag was not stitched, top stitch on that seam, so we're not going to top stitch. I leave these tails long. I think it just, sometimes if you cut them short, it tends to pull through. So there's no harm in leaving it long. Now, if you made your strap and it's a 1/4 inch and it's thicker, you may want to, but for these thinner leather straps, we're just going to leave it. So we know where our side seams are. I'm going to open this up and mark the front and back. So I'm just going to match the side seams. And you can either use a fabric pen or a notch to indicate where that front and back is. We're going to do the same thing on our bottom piece. So I'm just going to first fold it like a taco. And then switch it like a hot dog. It is not a perfect circle. It's more of an oval. All right, so from here we want to go ahead and clip this on. The longer oval side is the front and back. So throw this handle in here. Hopefully it'll kind of keep out of my way. Now, even before I do that, I'm going to tell you one thing that I found easier is to make, you have to make clips, and you always make clips in your straight edge. So in this case, this is our straight edge. This is our curved edge. So we're going to want to make little snips all along the bottom of this. If you do it, like if you take these two and hold them together, you can kind of do them both at the same time, both sides at the same time. So I'm just going to do that. So essentially I'm cutting through both layers to get my little snips on both sides, so I'm not having to do this twice. Okay. So now I have my little snips. Let's see, it's better from here. All the way around. The tail fell out again. All right, so now we can go ahead and clip. I'm going to clip the front and back first. And then I'll clip the sides. And then I'll clip the rest. Now, if you would like some help in holding this in place, you can staple this bottom on, as long as you do it within the seam allowance, and then just remove your staples. You're going to see that I'm probably going to use my hemostats to help me with it, just to kind of hold it in place. You can use an awl to help you hold it. Whatever method works best for you. Okay, when I actually sew this, I'm going to sew it standing up. So I'm going to take it like this, take this edge out, and stitch. You may even have to kind of smush the bag down a little bit when you do it. That's okay. When you do, it's going to want to pull away. And these hemostats are great for that, to make sure everything stays in sync. So these are hemostats. They are, they lock, and then you can use these points to pull. So it's a great option. If you work in the medical industry, I'm sure you know exactly what those are. All right, so fiddle with this a little bit and start stitching. So since this is wanting to slip out, let's go ahead and staple it. That would be a good way to show you how to staple. So I have just a regular stapler here, and all I'm going to do is, within the seam allowance, go ahead and throw some staples along this edge. And the great thing about using staples is that you can remove your clips.
You should.
A little too close to the edge. So take your time with this. You see, I'm not rushing. I'm just making sure these edges are nice and even. All right, look at that. So you can see those staples right in there. So I'm going to be stitching basically between the staples and the stabilizer. And then I'll remove the staples, and they have done their job for me. It makes it much easier when you're doing rounded bottoms. All right, here we go. Just keep turning and maneuvering. You're going to go all the way around, staying off of the stabilizer.
Big.
And we're almost to the edge or to the end. So you can see here how that stitching line is right between the staples and the stabilizer. So I'm going to go ahead and get my staple remover and take all these staples out. Do not turn the bag yet though. We're going to leave it inside out, and then we're going to start on the next step, which is our lining. The exterior of the bag is now complete. I did trim back this seam allowance just a little bit. Don't turn the bag, okay? We're just gonna look in it, make sure it all looks nice, and set it aside. they work on the lining. So we're on now on step 5, which is the lining. Let's get all of our components done. This is our slip pocket, our interior slip pocket. I'm just going to fold it in half, right sides together. We're going to stitch down both sides. Turn this, we're not going to clip this corner. Instead, we're just going to fold it right along that stitch line. Stick my thumb and my finger in here, hold that seam down, and then just turn this out. Using my finger to poke it out. Now, sometimes you need to use a turning tool. This is my favorite one. It's the OESD turning tool. It has a ball on both sides. One's a little smaller than the other. Sometimes I need to get that in there and just finish poking it out. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And all I'm really doing is laying that seam down a little bit more and getting that corner nice and poked out. Now I'm going to take this to the iron, I'm going to press it, and then we'll put the top accent piece on. Pocket is all nice and flat. I'm going to just stitch the top closed, using a scant 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. On the accent piece, I put double-sided tape on both sides. This is just 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to peel the backing off this tape, center the pocket,
Please.
peel the backing off the other side. We're going to fold it down. And then we're just going to stitch. I'm going to cut these ends even with the pocket side. Now we have a great looking slip pocket. So the other thing on the inside are these credit card slots. So take each of them, and I like to use this Beacon Fabri-Tac. I'm just going to put a little bit of this. You want to put it from the line that you drew. There's a line on the pattern piece. You're going to transfer that on, and the lining's going to go right underneath. Now, if you have a right and wrong side to your lining, you're going to put it wrong sides together. I'm going to put it below the line, as I said, and just line that up. Just like that. I'm going to let that dry and work on these others. And then we have our number 2 piece here. You don't need a lot of glue, just need enough to hold it. All right, from here, let's put 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape along the top edge of each one of these pieces. on the two number one pieces that are kind of shaped oddly, I'm going to peel the backing off the tape, and then we're going to fold the top edge over, and we're going to match this top edge to this little short edge right there. I'm going to fold it all the way across. So see how those edges right here match? That little edge, that's what we're looking for. I'm going to put a couple clips because my glue was not 100% dry. Let's do this one. Now, you don't have that little edge to match on this one. So you can measure an inch down and fold this an inch down, or you can kind of use the edge of your lining as a guide. And now we're going to top stitch each one of these top edges.
Okay. Make it big.
So now we have all of our edges top stitched for all of our credit card pieces. So grab one of your lining pieces. You want to make sure that you're working with just the back portion, okay, not the flat portion. So to do that, here's what I suggest. So take a ruler and put it right in the spot where the piece curves up, like right at that edge. You're going to put the other side of the ruler about 2 inches from the bottom corner. And then you're going to draw a line. And this is just with a sew line air erase pen. So now you can see, like with that line, that is what we're dealing with the back. So this part over here does not matter because that's the flap. This is what matters. So let's start with our credit card pieces. And it doesn't matter which goes on which necessarily. You're just gonna have a pocket on one side and then these credit card slots on the other. So place 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape on the bottom of each of your credit card slots. Okay, and then on the number 2 credit card piece, you're going to place it all the way around, except for the top. You can place it around 3 sides. Now, as a little hint, I really do not like lining peeking through. So you can see here, I actually cut my lining slightly shorter than my main piece so I can make sure it's not peeking through. You don't have to do that. That's just a little hint to make it all look a little bit neater. Okay, so from here, I'll give you some measurements. Now you want to find the center of the top just of the back piece. So you could fold this over to the line to get that center. Don't mark the center of the bottom, because when we go to put our bottom on, we're going to be marking the center from there, and you might have too many center points. You don't really need the center of the bottom at this point. So go ahead and peel the backing off the tape. And line up the top of the credit card slot with the measurement. Now, at first time through, the credit card slots were a little bit too far down in the bag. And remember, you're going to be stacking these going down. So if you feel like you want your credit card slots a little further in, go ahead and increase this measurement from the top of the bag to the first slot. If you want it closer to the top, then obviously decrease. If you have decided you want to put 4 or 5 of these number 1 pieces, then just remember that as you stack these, they're going to keep going down on the bag. Does that make sense? On the inside, you're going to have a lot of different slot pieces. Okay, so once you have the bottom edge here, you peel the backing off the tape, you put it down, you're just going to stitch around the bottom here using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so you have this and it kind of flaps open right now, no problem. We're going to take our second piece, peel the backing off the tape, and we want to lay the top of this piece right along the bottom edge of this one. So where these little jut outs are, essentially is where you're lining the top of the second piece up with the bottom of that edge. You don't want to see the edge, you want to just cover it. And it should be about a 1/2 inch away from each other, the two tops. Okay, you go ahead and use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance and sew the bottom. So now we have our 2 pieces on here. If you want to keep going, you can certainly do that. Going to cut my threads a little closer. All right. So now peel the backing off the 3 sides. You know, again, as many as you want. When you're done, add this final piece. Line the top edge of this piece up just underneath that edge. And I'm going to mark the center because we want to sew a line up the center so that we can divide them. So I'm going to measure from that side. I'm going to measure the center from this side. So right in between those 2 lines, if they're not already right on top of each other, and mine are not.
Mine are a little bit off.
So I'm going to sew right up the middle. So when we sew these, we're going to, of course, sew down, across, up, back down the same stitch. Don't take any additional stitches here. Your credit card won't fit. You want to sew up and down the same line, over and up. You turn, you go right back down that same line. And then finish stitching it out. All right, I'll wipe my white lines off. You can test your slots, make sure everything fits good. And there we go, good to go. So now let's go ahead and put our slip pocket on. I have my other lining piece here. I'm going to line it up just like I did on the first one to focus in on the back. So now I'm going to take my slip pocket piece and I'm going to center it. Now the slip pocket piece, because of the width of it, it needs to go a little bit further down inside the bag. If you prefer to have it closer to the top, you're going to need to narrow your slip pocket. So I'm going to put mine as high up as I can based on the width. And I did give you a measurement in the pattern for this. So go ahead and use that measurement. You'll be fine to get it all lined up. And it's not a super wide slip pocket, so I'm not going to worry about dividing it. I'm just going to sew around the edges. Make sure it's straight. And then we'll sew it on. Okay, from here, I am going to put some rivets in the corners just to kind of stabilize the pocket because there's always a lot of pressure on these slip pockets. You just poke a couple of holes in here. Stick some rivets in. I always put some Decovil Heavy in the back of these. Okay, I'll go set these and then we'll move on. Slip pocket's done. The last thing we need to do for the lining is to put the key fob together. So I'm just going to take my key fob piece and put some double-sided tape down one side. Now, you don't have to use double-sided tape here. You can just clip it if you prefer. I'm going to match the two long sides as best I can, but we are going to trim some off so they don't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch away from the raw edge. I'm going to take this over to my cutting table and I'm just going to cut 1/8 inch off this raw edge. So this is what I cut off, just a little bit. I'm going to put a clip, 1/2 inch clip on the end, fold that over. Punch a hole, add a rivet. I'll set this and then we'll put the lining together. All right, so now it's time to put the lining together. You want to put your key fob, you don't want to put it on this folding side, you want to put it on the other side. So I'm just going to kind of clip it to the edge here, or I'm not even going to clip it, I'm just going to baste it on, just so I don't forget it. And you notice I put it on at an angle so that it would fall to the bottom instead of just being straight across the top. All right, so put right sides of your linings together. I'm going to clip each side and stitch. Now, when you stitch, you're going to start out at the 1/4 inch seam allowance that the pattern says, but you're going to increase your seam allowance as you continue on down the bag. The reason why you have a separate lining piece for the bottom is because you are increasing your seam allowance here and your regular bottom won't fit. So you want to end up with at least about a 5/8 inch seam allowance at the end once you get done stitching each side. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to start at my 1/4 inch and just increase as I go.
Shoot.
I'm going to repeat for the other side. So I think you can really see on this side how I started out and where I ended up. If you match those edges right there, see the difference, how I came in? Because I don't want a baggy lining. So we can cut these seam allowances back. When you cut them, don't cut them all the way to the top. I usually veer off a few inches from the top here. We obviously don't have an upper lining here, so it's a little bit different, but you just want to get some of this bulk out. All right, let's go ahead and find our center of our front and back. And then do the same thing on the bottom lining piece. All right, and then let's go ahead and put our lining in, or our bottom in. We're going to do this the same way we did our main bag. So, therefore, let me go ahead and cut little clips here, snips. And you want to, it's going to be hard to do more than a 1/4 inch seam allowance here because you're putting a round bottom on. But if you can, go ahead and try to increase that seam allowance a little bit, just as much as you can. So I'm going to clip the front and the back, the sides. Lining up the notches with the seams. And then continue clipping around. And as you clip around, you're going to spread your little clips, your little snips. Once the bottom's clipped on, we're going to go ahead and stitch. This is not going to be nearly as difficult as the main part of the bag because there's no stabilizer on here. So you should not have to staple it. But if you do, feel free. Okay, once the bottom's stitched on, go ahead and trim the seam allowance back. All right, so from here we want to turn the lining. And then we're going to take the lining and we're going to put it on the inside. This is the last step. Step 6 assembly. We're going to place it on the inside of our bag. Now, make sure that your zipper pocket is open so that you can pull it through. So your parts and pieces are in there. I'm first going to clip the side seams. Now, this top point, we top stitched down if you remember. So the lining part, go ahead and put it all in the other direction so that basically you have your main part of your bag, the seam allowance going in one direction, you want the lining going in the other. And you're going to have a little triangle there that you'll cut off after we sew it. So once you do that, you want to go ahead and match these little pivot points. Clip the rest. You did the same thing on the other side. And I'm going to move over to the cylinder arm to top stitch that, or to stitch this. You don't have to. You could certainly just kind of move this to the side and stitch from the inside without a problem. But I'm going to move over there. So I'll meet you at the cylinder arm. Here we are at the cylinder arm. We're going to go ahead and get started. I suggest you start at the highest point here. Start from off the fabric, stitch on, and then we go around the other side, we'll stitch off. And I'll show you what I mean when we get there at the end. We'll see how it all works out. So this is also at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And remember, you're stitching over all of your top closures, side closures. Actually, not your side, just your top. I just stitched over that right there. When I get to my pivot point, I am going to actually lift my presser foot and pivot. So again, I'm at my pivot point. I'm going to turn and pivot. And then up here, I'm just going to stitch right off. Do a back stitch. So this is what I mean by stitching off. You see, I started here and stitched on, and then I ended up here and stitched off. You end up with this triangle up here. We're just going to cut that off. So let me cut it and I'll show you. So see, we still have our back stitches there, but we cut the top of the triangle off. The other thing I'm going to do is taper these two sides in because we want this to lay flat as possible. It's not going to come to a perfect point, but we do want it to come to a point somewhat. So what I mean by tapering is like this. See how I cut my seam allowance in here? And the same thing here, I cut it in. It's just tapering this down a little bit. The other thing that you need to do is at these pivot points, you'll want to cut a little triangle in them. So let me cut it and I'll show you. So let's see, there you go. You can see right there at that pivot point, I cut a little triangle. So now when we turn this and it folds, it's going to want to fold up like this, and you see how that takes that triangle, that missing fabric will fold nicely. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing at the other pivot point. Okay, so again, pivot point, when we fold that, it'll fold right up nice. All right, so from here, you can go ahead and reach in and turn the bag. So let me pull my lining out first and my big tail of a strap here. so once you get it all pulled out, go ahead and stuff the lining inside the bag.
Good step.
And we're going to clip the top. So you can kind of make sure that everything looks good and nice and neat in here. And then, which it does, when you clip the top, one thing I can't stand is linings peeking through. You hear me say that all the time. You can actually take the lining and roll it slightly to the inside of the bag so that from the front you cannot see it. Doesn't have to be a lot. It's just enough so that it's not peeking up through. By tapering that seam where the point is, this is what the seam looks like. See, it's not super pointy. It's just kind of a flat, dull curve there, but it's nice. So I'm just going to clip around, making sure that lining's good in there, pushed in. Okay, so now I'm going to top stitch. And I'm actually going to start top stitching at the side seam because this flap here, this is going to actually be in the front of the bag. So I really don't want to see any kind of starting and stopping there. I really would prefer to have it on the side where it's a little more inconspicuous.
Bastard.
Here at the corner, I'm actually going to take a couple stitches straight across and then turn again.
So,
All right, so here's what this point ended up looking like. So I came up and I did about 3 stitches straight across and then came back down. All right, so we're gonna head back over to the flatbed to finish up. We have a couple of things left before we can finish, or to finish up. So the first thing is I'm going to pull this pocket out and we're going to stitch it closed. So you see how this edge here doesn't pull out nearly as far? It's going to be hard to top stitch up or to close it up to there. That's why you needed to stitch down at least 3 inches to do that. So I'm just going to turn this under and clip it. And then we will stitch it. So just pull it out as much as you can again. So I stitched down 3 inches. It's gonna be a little tight, but it'll work. So I'm going to start from this side and stitch up because my needle will be able to get closer up here. All right, once your pocket's stitched, you can go ahead and put it back in. Close it up. All right, so now from here, what you want to do is fold this flap in. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and hook my button to help me keep it closed for right now. So we're going to be dealing with our strap now. You want your strap to be underneath your grab handle. Okay. Then you're going to take it and thread it through your front closure. Okay, so now it's going through both straps. You're then going to take the end and thread it back through the main grab closure, but not your front strap. And by doing that, you're going to be capturing this front strap to hold it closed. See? So essentially, you almost don't even need the button. The button is more of a decorative part of the bag than anything else. Now, you're going to have to train your fob a little bit, or your leather here to be closed right here at this corner. That's not a problem. Once you get stuff in, it'll change the look of the bag a little bit. Okay, so under your zipper, so now you have 2. You want to take your strap adjusters and thread them through each side of the zipper. So we got 1 here, and we have 1 here. Okay, so now take your swivel clasps, put it on the end, and then you're going to give yourself a little slack here, and you're going to take this end, and on the inside you're going to thread it up through one side and then down over the bar. And you want to make sure that you're clipping and you're stitching this loop, this end of this part here, to the part that the swivel clasp is on, okay? Because if not, you're not going to be able to move your strap. So let me just put a couple clips there. So see, I still have my big loop here, but then the smaller loop is clipped to itself. Right. And do the same thing over here. So give myself a big loop. Take the end, thread it up through, and then over the bar. Have it come out the other side. And clip it. Oops. So we have a big loop, and we have the little loop. The little loop is clipped to itself. You want to make sure the tails on these are about the same. Give. Move this one up a little bit. You should have roughly it's about 1 3/4 to 2 inches worth of tail there. Okay. Now you can put a rivet here, but I actually don't particularly care for a rivet here, even though that's usually how I do most of my straps. I'd rather sew it on this bag, and you're not going to be able to see. I mean, this is inside here. You're really not going to be able to notice. But I want to do at least 2 rows of stitching. So I'm just going to go back and forth a couple times on each one of these and do 2 or 3 rows of that to make sure it stays. We don't have any chance of it coming out. So let me see if I can give you a close-up of this. So here's the big loop. So right here, here's the big loop. Here's the little loop. The little loop is attached to itself. This is the rest of the handle. Okay, here's the big loop. There's a little loop. We're going to stitch like here, and then we're going to stitch again up here and give it 2 good rows of stitching. One more time. I'm going to just burn my edges here, all my little threads. So now I can pull that. We have our strap with our connector. So we're going to do the same thing with the other one. We do stitch. Do one more time. So originally I had tried riveting these, and I just didn't particularly care for it for whatever reason. Clean up all these threads. So we can use it as a backpack. Just clip these to their respective D-rings. We have a cute little backpack. Or of course you can zip this down. Put both of these on the same D-ring. And now you have a sling. The bag is complete. Didn't it turn out fantastic? I just love it. So of course we can unzip, wear it as a backpack, It goes on easily. That back pocket is where your phone would be, so it's against your back. And there's no way a pickpocketer can get in there because your strap essentially is holding the bag closed with this upper closure. If you want to switch it to a sling, you just adjust the straps. Easily, can be done easily. Zipper your zipper. Move one of your rings or your swivel clasps so that they're both on the same ring. And then you just slide it over your head. And now you have a really cool sling. So the Farfalla Backpack Sling. It would be amazing to make out of the leather, which I showed you in the beginning. The leathers are fantastic for these. Those lambskins are perfect. They're so soft and they're amazing. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this tutorial, the Farfalla. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, leave a comment. Please give me a thumbs up. And until next time, happy sewing.